Hi everyone, thanks for joining the session looking at the new C progression reporting processes that were introduced in Term 4 2025. So we're going to have a look at the new regulations, the new progression reports, advice for using curriculum tasks for ACSF progression, and some sample reports as well. So in late 2025, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, or DEWA, who oversee and fund C, introduced a new progression reporting process for C. These changes came about following the commencement of the new contract and after consultation with providers. So under the new requirements, we will still be reporting at the end of each term, so the EAL or CJIR assessments can be used to claim outcomes, but we will now be required to report on all indicators in which the student has progressed. And all of this is tied into the new KPI 3 progression, which will be measured upon a student exiting C. So progression reporting is to take place at the end of each term using the EAL or CJIR assessments that you have used during that period. And note that if a student exits the program before reaching their next progression point, be that because they've used up their 2 years or because they have withdrawn, and if you've collected evidence of progression, you may submit a progression report using any evidence collected up until that point. So we continue to be required to submit the first progression report within 6 months of study, even if a student commenced partway through their first term. So a student commencing midway through term 1 would be reported on at the end of term 2, based on any EAL or CJIR progression demonstrated in term 1, and more likely the progression that they demonstrated through EAL or CJIR progression in term 2. After that point, the progression reports would be based on a full term of semester. So in this case, the following report would be at the end of term 3, and the one after that in term 4, and so on. Note that you may also report progression at the end of their first term if you have the evidence. Say, for example, the student started in week 3 and were able to pass all of the assessments for that unit and achieve progression. Do check with your manager, though, to make sure that you understand the process that they will prefer you to follow regarding new commencements. So when completing C progression reports, you will need the following: the student's current customized training plan, or CTP, the assessment tasks that have been completed over the reporting period, the LFE claiming ACSF progression using EAL CJIR unit completion guide, and the progression report document for the curriculum level that the student is enrolled in. So each certificate has its own progression record, and there is a separate one for students enrolled in the work experience course as well. Now, we have designed our progression reports to streamline the reporting of all indicator progression to a simple 2-page document that captures all progression over the reporting period in one document. And importantly, those of you who have been teaching with us for a while, ACSF cover sheets are no longer required. The progression reports will replace these, and they will sit within the student's digital file. The form itself will look quite familiar. It is similar to the current ACSF cover sheet, but remember we are using one form per reporting period to report all indicator progression. And there are 2 additional parts where we can record spiky profile or nil progression, and I'll explain more on these shortly. So let's have a look at each section. Step 1, student details. So you enter the student's full name and their JSID. Next, you select the provider name and region from the drop-down menus, enter your first and last name, and then select the reporting date. Note that this is the date that you submit the report to admin and must be before the end of the term of the reporting period. And there's a calendar function here you can just click on. In step 2, we enter the EAL or CJIR units and the indicators that map to these. So all EAL and CJIR units have been mapped to the ACSF using the LFE mapping documents, which are based on the national mapping documents developed by LWA, the National Quality Assurance Provider. So in the first column, you select all the units that the student was enrolled in the reporting period, and you just need to click on the box to cross it. Then in the second column, select all indicators that the student successfully demonstrates. Again, clicking on the box to cross it. So in this example, the assessor has looked back at what the student has achieved over the past term, and we can see that this student has completed the learning unit, VU 23500, and the reading and writing unit, VU 23503, which means in this period, the assessor can claim progression for 101, 103, 104, 105, and 106. Now, if you're claiming an indicator marked with an asterisk, you'll need to check on the document claiming ACSF progression using EALCG unit completion to see what conditions apply to claiming this indicator, and only select these indicators if these conditions have been met. So here, for example, we can see VU 23504 has an asterisk next to it, next to 105 and 106 rather, and VU 22355 has an asterisk next to 1.09. And we'll look at these conditional progressions later. Likewise, if you're claiming an indicator that's marked with a caret, you'll need to check the same document apply to claiming this indicator. And again, we'll look at this in more detail later. Now, some providers deliver a slight variation to the LFE recommended unit selection for C, and this tends to be where there are mixed AMP and C classes. So units that are offered as part of a varied delivery schedule are shaded lighter at the bottom of the list. So you can see here those 2 units at the bottom of the table there. So please confirm with your manager or coordinator to understand if these units are part of your site's delivery schedule. Next up, we have 2 sections in grey. These are sections that you'll only need to complete if required. So the first section is for spiky profile progression. Now, a reminder, a spiky profile student is one whose levels are not uniform across all indicators. So they may, for example, have higher speaking skills than they do for other skills, and this is quite common. So use this section if you wish to claim progression when the student's indicators are higher or lower than the enrolled EAL level. For example, this first student has been studying in Cert 1 and has been studying a reading and writing unit which aligns to 105 and 106. However, based on the student's CTP, they are working towards 205, and in class you've worked with them to reach 205. So you can submit LFE ACSF tasks as evidence to demonstrate this. Likewise, in the second example, you might have a student who is studying in Cert 1 and has been studying a numeracy unit which is mapped to 109, 110, and 111. This student, however, still needs to achieve PLB 11. So in class, you have worked with them to reach PLB 11, and you can submit LFE ACSF tasks as evidence to demonstrate this. Now, to help you with choosing task pairs to use to claim spiky profile progression, refer to the LFE ACSF task pairing guidance for spiky profile progression document. And you can see here, to record this, you enter the indicator level you are claiming and highlight it so it is visible for admin and auditing purposes. So under the new regulations, we need to report all progression, even when there is no progression. And this is referred to as nil progression. So we use this section to note where a student has attempted the EAL-CGA tasks, but is not yet competent. So to record this, you simply enter the indicator as per their current CTP, not the indicator attempted, and highlight it so it is visible for admin and auditing purposes. For example, this student has achieved 103 at PTA and is working towards 203 in class. They have attempted the 203 indicator, but are not yet competent. We will note this as nil progression by recording 103 in the table and again highlighting it so it's visible for admin and auditing purposes. Finally, to complete the form, enter the full names of the tasks used, making sure that the name is as per the task title or the task header. That way, if the file is called for audit, the auditor is able to quickly locate the relevant evidence. The sections in this part of the form are color-coded using the same colors of the ACSF. So here we can see gold for learning and red for reading. The form is designed to be filled in electronically so that it can be emailed to your admin and quickly stored in the student's digital file. So please check with your admin team as to their preferred labeling of the file. It is suggested that the labeling includes the student's JSID and the words progression report and the date of submission. So let's go back to those asterisk indicators. Now, for most units, it is pretty straightforward. We just use the EAL-CGA tasks to claim progression based on their clear mapping to the ACSF. However, for a very small number of units, the mapping is not perfect, and we'll need to supplement the evidence with a second piece of student work. So looking at the Cert 1 Reading and Writing Unit VU 23504, we can see that 105 and 106 can be claimed using this assessment tool, but there is a condition. Note here, though, that VU 23503 above it also maps to 105 and 106. So if these indicators have been claimed in a previous semester, then there is no need to claim conditional progression. So always check the student CTPs at the beginning of each term so you know what indicators are available to be claimed and what evidence is needed to be collected. So looking at what these conditions are for VU 23504 and looking at the mapping for this unit in the LFE ACSF curriculum mapping documents. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these are based on the national mapping documents and are available on the LFE website. So you can see that this unit only has partial demonstration, as only one writing task is required for this unit, but the ACSF requires 2 texts. So we can see the advice here is to pair task B, the dishwasher task, with a prose writing task, with suggested tasks listed there. Now, as you've been teaching writing this semester, it is very likely that you have used these tasks in class. So it is simply just a matter of retaining this task rather than giving it back to the student. The suggested tasks listed throughout this document are ones that are frequently used by C teachers as class activities. And now looking at those indicators marked with a caret. These occur mainly in elective units that only some providers include in their delivery schedules. So do check with your manager or coordinator to see if these units are relevant for you. So the indicators that are marked with carets indicate one of 2 things. Either the indicator and the unit are at a lower or higher level compared to the rest of the certificate, or alternatively, the unit maps to both a high level and a low level. So, for example, maps to both ACSF level 1 and ACSF level 2. And as such, the indicator you award is based on the student's input. So always check that the indicator is available to be claimed in the student's CTP. So here, for example, we can see the Cert 1 progression report with VU 23558, an elective only used by some providers. Now this unit maps to level 2 indicators. And for speaking, it can also map to both level 1 and level 2, depending on the student's output. So if these indicators are available to be claimed, you may claim them. This information is also contained in another document called Claiming ACSF Progression using EAL CG unit completion. This document lists all of the conditions for indicators with asterisks or carets for all levels. The conditional indicators are highlighted in yellow, and again you can see here that if 105 and 106 has already been demonstrated in a previous semester using VU 23503, then there is no need to collect that additional evidence. So again, at the start of each semester, look at what your students will be working on towards this semester, see what they have already achieved, and plan your assessments accordingly. So let's have a look at some sample reports. So here you can see what the evidence would look like for a participant with a flat profile, where all units were successfully completed and therefore all mapped indicators have been awarded. So VU 23500 was completed, so we award 101. And VU 23503 was completed, leading to 103, 104, 105, and 106 being awarded. And here you can see what that evidence would look like for a participant with nil progression. So VU 23500 leading to 101. Then for the reading and writing unit, we can see they achieved 105 and 106 successfully by completing the writing tasks in that unit, but they did not successfully complete the reading tasks. And as such, we are awarding nil progression by noting PLB03 and PLB04, recording the same indicators as they appear on their CTP. And here you can see what that evidence would look like for a participant with a spiky profile. spiky profile progression. So for VU 23501, we can see that this student has 107, 107 and PLB 08 in their CTP. So here we're using the unit to claim 108, and the teacher has then worked with the student in this class to collect ACS evidence for 207. So let's have a final look now about how to prepare your assessments each term. You'll need to be thinking about what you'll be assessing and what you'll be claiming for ACSF progression from the beginning of term. So, at the start of each term, look at the units you'll be delivering and assessing, look at the ACSF indicators that can be claimed using those units, check each student's CTP to see what indicators are available to be claimed for each student, and then there'll be a number of pathways to consider. So depending on the student's CTP, there are 4 possible progression reporting pathways. Firstly, a nice and easy one. This is where you have all indicators available to be claimed. So if your student has these indicators available to be claimed and they successfully demonstrate them, claim these indicators through the progression report at the end of term. If they are not successful, report this as nil progression. Next is a slight variation, where only some indicators are available. Maybe 107 is available but not 108, perhaps because of a spiky profile or because this has been achieved previously. If your student only has some of these indicators available to be claimed, and they successfully demonstrate them, claim these indicators through the progression report at the end of term, and if they are not successful, report this as nil progression. So now let's look at what to do if the indicators that align to the units this term are not in the student's CTP. Firstly, because of a spiky profile. So if your student does not have any of these indicators available to be claimed due to a spiky profile, you may work with them to achieve the lower or higher level indicators that relate to that unit. And again, if they successfully demonstrate these indicators, claim them as spiky profile progression on the progression report. And if they are not successful, report this as nil progression. Secondly, it could be because of previous progression. So if your student does not have any of these indicators available to be claimed due to having achieved them through previous unit completion, you may work with them to achieve the next level up indicators that relate to the units. And if they successfully demonstrate these indicators, again, you can claim them as spiky profile progression on the progression report. And if they are not successful, you can report this as nil progression. So just to recap, progression reports are submitted for each student at the end of each term. We record all units completed and the indicators they align to. We report nil progression or spiky progression where required. Conditional progressions require additional evidence, and a digital copy of the report is stored in each student's digital file. So thank you for your time today. If you do have any questions regarding the information covered in today's session, do first have a chat with your manager or coordinator. If they're unable to answer your questions, they'll get in touch with me for my advice. Thank you once again. Goodbye.